Aliexpress sometimes has some great affordable watches, but sometimes, just sometimes, you come across an amazing affordable watch from Aliexpress, just like this one. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. In particular, I'm talking about this Merkur Skin Diver. This watch from Merkur is by far the best that I've experienced from this particular watch company, and I've owned a few of them, and I've found that each one that I have owned has been really good. It's been a nice watch, they've been affordable, and I've really enjoyed wearing them. But this Skin Diver is by far my favorite, and I think it's been my favorite because I like the look of it, I like the size of it, and of course it's affordable, and I do like affordable watches. In fact, this one only cost me 200 Australian dollars, and I do want to talk about that price a little bit more, but I'm going to do that at the end of the video. But if you do end up actually wanting to buy one, well, I'm going to leave an affiliate link down in the description of this video from the store that I actually purchased it from. But let's flip over into the review of this watch, and let me show you why I think it is so cool and why I've been enjoying it so much. So let's flip around and check out this Merkur Skin Diver. When this Merkur Skin Diver first arrived and I did my first impressions of it, I got a couple of things wrong. Firstly, I was talking about the spelling on the dial. In fact, I thought it was spelled incorrectly, but actually it's in French, not in English. I also thought the internal rotating bezel that's on this watch was a little bit sticky or a little bit hard to use. In fact, that was more just my user error. So in fact, the couple of things that really stood out to me as being a little bit of an issue with this watch hasn't turned out to be an issue at all, which is great because everything else about the watch I really liked, and those issues, now that they've gone away, has made this watch even better. But something that stood out to me straight away that I did like was the dimensions of this watch, and I didn't get that wrong because this one here is a 38.5mm case. It has a width of 13.2mm, a lug to lug of 46.3mm, lug width of 20mm, and on the supplied canvas strap it is 72 grams. Now as we zoom in on that dial, you'll see it is a matte black with all printing on there. There's sort of the minute track there and little dots at the hours, the Merkur, and that French writing there, anti-choc and manual, are all in white. And then there's a whole heap of sort of Fotina style loom. But pay attention to the hands now, because we've got polished hour and minute hands, but there's some scratches on there. Now that is only seen under the macro lens. You can't really see that under your naked eye. So that's something that stands out as in what you're seeing right now, but not in real life. But what you might also see is that second hand is brushed. And that gives it a little bit more of an interesting sort of feature, I guess. It sort of doesn't stand out too much, but when you see the watch like this, you'll see the hour and minute hand sort of fade away a little bit and just see the loom, but then that second hand kind of stands out and captures that light, and it gives you another little aspect to this watch which I rather like. Of course, there is a date window at the 3 o'clock. It's not color matched, it's white, which is okay, and it's just got a little white border around it. There is of course an internal rotating bezel in there, actioned by that bezel up there at the 10 o'clock. It's on a bit of an angle. It's also printed, and I think gives another little bit of an element to this, partly because of the dual crowns, and I quite like dual crowns. It gives a whole case a little bit more of an interest factor, but having that sort of larger internal rotating bezel also adds to that dial sort of look and shape. That's all covered by a piece of sort of slightly domed top hat mineral crystal. This one's not sapphire, unfortunately. And realistically, it doesn't really bother me that it's not sapphire. It's just worth noting. It's probably something that helps keeps the price down a little bit, but it is a really nice piece of mineral crystal, and I have been wearing this one, and there is definitely no marks or scratches on it. The case itself is all brushed. Everything is brushed. You'll see there's a step down there from that boxed crystal, down onto the tops of the lugs, down onto the sides of the case. Has drilled end lugs as well, so it is easy to swap this strap out if you want. Both the crowns are signed with this little sort of envelope looking M. I guess it's the Merkur sort of M, but to me it looks like a little envelope. The one there at the 10 o'clock for the internal rotating bezel is screwed down, but the main one is not. So you can go directly into manual winding, because this is a manual winding watch only. It's certainly worth noting that. I believe it's a seagull movement. It does have a quick set date feature, and when you do pull it all the way out, you can see that it does not hack the movement. This is probably a fairly simple movement, but I found that it's been running sort of okay. I haven't stuck it on a time grapher, however, and I always do like putting these movements, especially something a little bit different like this one, on the time grapher. So let's see how this one is performing. So as you can see, it's running at 21,600 vibrations per hour. beat error is definitely higher than I would like. Anything over 1 is generally a little bit iffy. Amplitude's also a tiny bit low, but in reality, it's only running a little bit fast. So from day to day, for a sort of an affordable watch, it's okay. And because I'm not wearing this one every single day, it has been okay, but that's probably not the best figures that I've ever been happy with from a watch. Now, of course, this has an internal rotating bezel. So as you unscrew it, you'll feel it pop, and then you can actually start moving the bezel. Now, moving it with my left hand is a little bit awkward, I have to admit. Not to actually move it back and forth like this is fine, but it's when you go to then lock it down again. And this is probably the sort of issue I had when I had this watch first. I was trying to put it back in again, and every time I tried to screw it back in again, it would move it. But if I flick it around, start using my master hand, and just finding the right spot for it, yeah, now I can screw it back in again. And as you can see, it hasn't moved it from where I've set it at the 12 o'clock. It's just a matter of finding it sort of pop in and then screw it in. My left hand obviously can't feel that as well as my right because I am right-handed. And let's have a look at that lume while we're here. I have left it to now because it's probably not the greatest feature of this watch. It's perfectly fine. I think it sort of shows off that cool looking hour hand pretty well. But besides that, I guess it's not really designed to be a dive watch or anything like that. So you don't need the greatest lume. And at this sort of price, I don't mind. And to be honest, lume is probably not the main priority for me anyway. Something else I quite like about the Merkur watches is their case backs. They use the same case back on pretty much all their watches. They've got this lion head, which I'm not sure if it suits the watch specifically, but I actually quite like it. It's relatively simple, inoffensive, and I think it looks quite good. Now, I really like the color of the strap and the quality of the strap, but I have found it has started to fray a little bit on the edges here and it catches a little bit. Not a bad thing, but just being aware of it is worthwhile. It has reinforced holes there, and you can see there's hardly any sign of wear. There's a little line there from where I've been wearing it, and I've been wearing this watch for quite a bit, so it sort of shows that it is holding up quite well. The hardware is actually really well made. Unfortunately though, it's all polished, and with the case being all brushed, that makes it sort of conflict a little bit with the watch, so that is a little bit of a shame. Not that you notice it too much when it's on wrist, because once it is on wrist, all I can say is that it sits down nicely. It's a lovely size, and I think it looks great on my 6 3/4 or around about 17 centimeters. Because I am on one of the last holes there under here, the second last hole, I do end up with a little bit of a tag, but that's okay, I guess. That sort of seems to happen a lot with me and straps because I have a sort of more of a medium sized wrist. But overall, I think it looks awesome. And I actually really like it on this strap because, mostly probably because of the color. I think it really suits this watch. So what do I like about this one? What don't I like about it? And what would I change? Well, I'm going to say I like the looks. I like the affordability of it. I love how it wears. And that's probably my favorite part about this one. I just like how it wears on wrist. It feels good. I think it looks good. And it's just a nice, comfortable watch on wrist. But I also quite like the cool factor of the 2 crowns. I like that. That's the thing that I like. So obviously I'm going to like it on this watch. But it's not all perfect. I think there's a few issues with it. You would have seen under that macro, there's some scratches on the hour hand there in particular. You don't notice it in real life without a macro lens, so it's not a bad thing, but it's not ideal, obviously, because it should be hopefully QC'd a little bit better than that. Having Frenched on the dial probably doesn't suit me perfectly because I speak English. But I guess a Chinese watch putting English on a dial versus a Chinese watch putting French on the dial, I guess it doesn't really make too much difference. I also don't think the polished hardware on there suits the watch, but not that it makes a big difference. But I think having it brushed just would elevate this watch just a little bit extra. But there is a couple of things probably that I would change about it. Yes, brushed hardware. It would be lovely to be able to see a color matched date wheel as well. And this seagull movement, albeit probably fine for an affordable watch, could certainly be improved by putting something a little bit better in there. And because I like this watch so much, I think I would like a better movement inside this watch. But at around that 200 Australian dollars, I think it still holds good value. And I want to talk about that price a little bit more. So let's get back to me to talk price. Well, for 200 Australian dollars, it's getting harder and harder to find a really nice mechanical watch that I particularly like. A few years ago, there were plenty to choose from, but now, not so many. Even on Aliexpress, they are starting to get a little bit more expensive, and to find the ones that really stand out to me becomes harder and harder. But this one, this skin diver, has certainly stood out to me. And that $200, before I even purchased this watch, I actually thought that was a really reasonable price because that's not too much money for something that looks like this. When I actually had it arrive on my doorstep, however, I realized that I really like this watch. In fact, I really like this watch, so that $200 felt even better. And to be honest, if I try to find something else to compare this against, something else within that price range, I struggle to find something that I like as much. So this one is definitely worth considering if you happen to like the look of it. And guys, thank you so much for watching this video. And if you enjoyed it, well, maybe check these videos out next.